Welcome to the Heavenly Tea. My thought today on my bike. What is it that children know that adults have forgotten? This is because there are very few people working in this field of, what is it? The field I work in is seeing a child as their full soul self and enabling them to both retain that full self, full soul self, and expand and express it. Now, most adults don't even think about a full soul self. What do I mean by that? Having your spirit fully inhabit your body. So what do children know that adults have forgotten? They are actually mostly born with their soul in their body. So a lot of people will talk about starseeds, indigo children, crystal children, rainbow children, and these gifted children who have certain gifts and talents we must nurture and bring forth. Okay, cute. However, I was one of those children, and I just felt like I was a child. It wasn't, I am a rainbow child, I'm an indigo. I was just that person who I was. This is what I worked out. And go and have a look at some of Oksana Buchanan's work too, because she talks about collecting the parts of the soul. Most of us have entrapped portions of our souls. Most of us living on Earth right now, maybe at some point decided to come here, the starseed idea, which is a very relevant idea, principle that we've had incarnations that our soul originates from somewhere else through source, but spreading into and maybe another planet, another galaxy, another universe, whatever. And at some point we were captured and brought here. Many souls arrive here in that way. Some, like myself, decide to come in because we see, oh, this is an interesting situation. Let's do something here. I feel my experience could be useful. So there are those of us like that. But because souls on the planet are coming in different ways, through capture, through the recycling situation of reincarnation, we have I can't speak. We have a situation where there are people all around us with varying degrees of their soul in their body. You could level it, you could measure it on the consciousness scale. So something like what Dr. Chanel Wolverton-Sion does. She can measure the consciousness level. And a lot of people are doing that, which determines your auric field. If you go back and watch that wonderful roundtable discussion with Oksana, with Sonia, with Chanel, with Matthew, that was a fabulous discussion with things like that in it. Because we're born with varying degrees of soul in us, the children have varying degrees of soul in them. So instead of saying, you're an indigo, you're a rainbow, it's more like, oh, you, lucky you, yay. You've managed to keep most of your soul. You've got most of your spirit in your body. It's very hard for a spirit to squish into a body. And mostly it will fill the body if it's fully present and then be existing elsewhere simultaneously in large quantity, because the spirit can be very, very large. Kind of, I suppose, depends on your expansive growth over whatever we call time. Or you can have a child who is born with a tiny splinter of their spirit in them because maybe they were separated out. Go and have a look. There's some videos about that. Very often when souls are captured, they are split into little soul splinters and put into different bodies. Now, those kind of children with a tiny piece of spiritual energy in them, enough to keep them alive and to function, those are what people are calling NPCs, the non-playing characters. They're humans. They just have a tiny bit of their soul in them. Then you have the humans who have a spirit which could be accessible were it not for trauma. And what the trauma does is it prevents the spirit being in the body. So you have what people call the silver cord of connection to the spirit. That's there because it's, unless you kill the person, you're not going to cut it off. Spirit is very tenacious, but there is only a very fine connection, and only if they can clear out all of the emotional trauma and disturbance is there literally space for the spirit to come in and inhabit the body. And then you have greater intuition, greater abilities. I talk a lot about that in my book, Brave Souls. How to act good and feel better, ostensibly about acting, but it's all about this, the amount of emotion, the amount of trauma suppressed in the body. So it's a kind of vacuum compression system, essentially. When you have cleared out your trauma, your programming, your spirit can come fully into your physical body. And then you can move around in a much more enlightened state. That is a kind of ascension, bringing the full spirit, just talking about it makes my fingers tingle, into the physical body. And that's where you have all of these amazing abilities, from obviously telepathy, stuff like what Oksana works with all the time, what I use in all these videos. When you go in and look at something, you look at a person on the inner planes, you can look at a future situation, you can go into the Akashic records, the morphogenetic field and access information, you're seeing things. That is a kind of telepathy. You can move things with your mind, you can determine things, you can change the weather. Pretty darn easy. You can commune with animals, easily commune with children. You can listen to them on a different wavelength. So that's just the adult frequency. So what do children know that adults don't? Mostly, they still have a freer connection to source. Even these so-called NPCs with a very fine, small amount of their spirit, because they've been on the planet for a very short space of time. The 9 months from that little moment of zygote formation to baby being born, during that time, the spirit is usually in and out of the body. Some spirits like to stay in for a long time, and it's probably an exciting, interesting experience. Others just like to come in and visit and then go out. So there's a great variation too with the child in the womb. But you've had 9 months of conditioning available, and then the child comes in, and then the real programming from the matrix, the environments around you start. However, you're still much fresher, cleaner, and purer than most of the adults in the world around us, because we adults don't realize, and we don't know how to clean ourselves, how to clear ourselves, and what it feels like to be ourselves. The video I just made before about recognizing when we're in fear, most of us don't recognize it. I'm always having to, I am afraid. I'm afraid. I have to pull it apart, pull to realize this is that low-level conditioning of fear, rather than the inspired spiritual speaking coming through. So most of us don't realize how much that we're programmed. And so what children still have is that access. But yes, you have splintered souls, very highly splintered souls, little small spiritual capacity. So we call those the NPCs. And those children can be awakened if there is a moment. And what are the moments you can awaken them through? It's always joy. Joy, excitement, enthusiasm, because those are way up the emotional scale, which means closer to your source energy. So even if just one moment of a bright spark of spirit, like a lightning strike, comes through you, it can come in and fill your body. And this has happened to a lot of people. They've suddenly, for some extraordinary moment of careful maneuvering from the spirit, found themselves in a moment of asking. Like Matthew talked about his washing of spirit, because he threw it all out there and told Creator, this is what I feel, this is what I know. I'm ridding myself of all of this stuff. Give to me. And suddenly he received his gifts of being able to see into situations and the future. Didn't come without, there are tricky things. There are still handlers on those etheric planes that he's having to navigate, and he's dealing with that right now. He doesn't really even know how much he's being handled, because that's the problem. As soon as you access your spiritual energy, the other etheric levels that aren't the humans, they come in and say, hey, whoa, we could use a little bit of that. We could get in on that act. And so you have to be very, very clear about your spiritual hygiene, about your cleanliness. What is the thought? Is it coming from my spirit, or is it coming from somewhere else, a program? So the children can have a sudden moment and receive more of their spirit, and then they become much more awakened. You've seen those sleepy children, haven't you? The ones that just sort of move through life like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then you've got the bright sparks, which is like, yes, and I could do this, and let's do this, and they're running, and they've got ideas pouring out of them. The energy is enormous. So that kind of child, like my granddaughter, full spiritual energy in her body. Oh. Now that's the kind of child that we would call the starseed, the rainbow child, the indigo child. It's just a child with a full capacity of spirit. And of course, from that incredibly thin, almost nothing, to completely full, almost totally the whole spirit in the body, you've got an enormous range of the amount of soul in the body. So what do children have that adults don't have? They have the ability to access more spirit because they've got less conditioning. Adults are made of that same array, that same group, from almost nothing to full. And then they go through life, through the churning of the matrix with all its programs and levels and frequencies and ideologies and influences. And they add those coats. Remember, I talk about adults of children with many coats on. So if we can learn that it's possible to take the coats off, to come back to our pure nature, to allow more of our spirit in and through us, we become a very different kind of human. This planet becomes an entirely different kind of human. And when we start to look at our children and say, yes, I see, here we have an issue. You, how beautiful, how blessed. You must have maneuvered your way through your lives so that here you have your almost full incarnation present with you. Beautiful. Let's maintain and nurture you in that you can keep this bright spark of genius active in you. And you, love, let's see what we can do to activate that spirit within you, to be able to bring more of it through, to reconfigure your soul through into your body, so that these so-called NPCs become transformed and start like a tiny seed, because the spirit is in there. You can't separate. If that person is alive, the spirit's there, and it's a seed. And if we learn, as the adults, the caretakers, the parents, the teachers, to nurture those seeds, those children also can be in touch with their spirit. And as the frequency of the whole plane increases because of what the entire universe is going through, what the earth herself is going through, what the sun is going through, what we as a human race are going through, the animals, all of us in our natural energetic ascension phase, which we are in, that also switches on more of the spiritual energy for these so-called NPCs, and they can raise and increase their spiritual downloads, and we all move up and through into different levels of experience of being. So away from the war campaigns and believing that the world is truly run by old men in underground bunkers with grey hair discussing who to kill or not. This is what we are taught. Go listen to all the information on the alternative media. Somewhere still, we still are taught that the world apparently is run that way. It is not. They think it is, because they've got the little toys with the buttons and the red buttons that they can press and go, boom. It's the biggest fallacy out there that they still think they're changing things. We, all of those beautiful entities of nature I just mentioned, the entire spiritual realms, are changing it. And we do that one person at a time. So what do children know that adults don't know? They are natural receivers of their spirit, natural expressors of their spirit. They naturally access their spirit. What we need to do as adults is to learn how to see and hear and feel them, to recognize their information, to recognize their knowing, to see it and to provide for it. That's what all my training is about in various different chapters. The essence of it is to be able to see a child in where they are currently their current space of information capacity in their body and mind, and where their soul, their spirit is, and how to get those two working in perfect harmony so that they become a full being. That is the training. It's great for you, it's great for them. So, just a short one. All of the links to my training are underneath this always. Go and have a look. Talk to me if you're interested. Now is the time. We are preparing for something extraordinary. We're not going to be a species manipulated by the grey-haired men in their bunkers anymore. Our consciousness is way more powerful. That is this energy driving the universe, originating from all origination, what we call source. Some people call it God, but we've been confused because God is like a man sitting in a chair. How absurd is that? So the origin of all, the creator, prime creation. We know there's a lot more power there than little men in bunkers with red buttons to press. So we're going to be concentrating on that. Yeah. And we do that for our children. We do that for ourselves. And in tandem, we bring the whole thing up. We bring us to this thing we call New Earth, our new Eden, our new way of living as proper, fully activated human beings. With that, cheers. See you soon. I'm Dr. Isabel M.A. This is the Heavenly Tea, activating your human potential.